Relevant? Is it still relevant looking at its nature and a general land scarcity? As Uganda continues to push forward with its national development agenda, development experts are calling for the abolishment of some practices which are deemed to be unsustainable going by the times. One of such practices is pastoralism, which is still practiced in some parts of the country, and statistics show that about 5% of Ugandans are practicing pastoralists. This practice has recently been associated with land grabbing in the oil-rich region of Bulisa, and it recently took the intervention of the UPDF, and in particular General David Nyefuza, to expel several pastoralists who had taken over land in that region. President Museveni has on several occasions advised the pastoralists to sell off their animals and buy land instead of grabbing it and causing wrangles that have led to bloodshed. He has also advised them to take up other productive activities and settle down. However, pastoralists have insisted that although they are a minority, their rights must be respected. They are instead calling for policy interventions to preserve their practice, saying pastoralism is still relevant to the Ugandan economy since it contributes up to 8.5% to the GDP of this country. So tonight we ask, is pastoralism still relevant in Uganda, looking at the current challenges? Our guest tonight, Mr. Benjamin Mutabuka from the Coalition of Pastoralist Civil Society Organizations. You're most welcome, Mr. Mutabuka.
Good evening, listeners and viewers on YouTube.
We also have Mr. Amos Isimbwa, the Basongora Group for Justice and Human Rights, also a member of the Regional Center for Pastoralist Elders. You're most welcome, Mr. Isimbwa.
Thank you. Good evening, the viewers.
Yes, we're also joined by Honorable Dr. Abdullahi Haj Wako from Kenya. He's the chairman of the Regional Center for Pastoralist Elders. You're most welcome, Honorable Wako.
Good evening, everybody, the viewers.
Viewers, because we're also on the internet via YouTube. Honorable Wako is also a member of the Kenyan Parliament. Mr. Mutabuka, first of all, we would like to understand this practice. What exactly is pastoralism and what does it involve?
Pastoralism has been confused by very many people who look at it as nomadism. And I want to say that the two are different. You can be a pastoralist without being a nomad. Now, what pastoralism involves, or when we talk of somebody as a pastoralist, we mean that your income, about 70% and above of a household income, is actually derived from livestock and livestock products. And pastoralism has three core pillars. That is the natural resources, which involves land, with all the things there, pasture, water, salts, and crop residues. Then we also have the herd, which involves different animals. You'll find that a pastoralist will keep different animals, cattle, camels, goats, sheep, because each of these animals has a specific meaning to a pastoralist. Then the third element is the human beings. That is the people, and when you look at people in pastoralism, you have to look at their activities in terms of production, that is looking after livestock, and other economic activities, by the way, because they do other things. Then reproduction, and that is, looking after children and their family. And also the last aspect is social function. We also have a lot of merrymaking, weddings, funerals, all those factors. So that basically those are the key elements of pastoralism.
So is a pastoralist, the way we generally understand it, these are men who are herding cattle and sheep and other things, and they move from place to place. So what do you mean they're not nomads?
Now, when you talk of nomads, pastoralists have to be understood in terms of the fact that they are surviving on natural resources.
Yes.
Actually, even 2 days ago, on this particular program, I had somebody talking about fishing. If you overfish a particular area, you are working on a natural resource.
Yes.
Automatically, there will be no fish there.
Yes.
And the livelihoods of the people around there will be in danger. Equally, in pastoralism, you have to have a big area so that at one time, when the pasture here is exhausted, or the other natural resources, water and so on, you can move on to another area. Equally, and that this is something I want to make very clear. There's nobody who grows beans on the same plot for 10, 15 years.
Yes.
And when he goes from this plot to another one, we don't call him what?
A nomad.
A nomad.
Yes.
So what we are really doing is the optimization of the use of the dry lands.
Just like fishermen.
Just like fishermen, just like people who till the land and grow beans, cassava, and so on.
Does it matter who owns the land on which you graze the cattle or the animals?
The most important thing, of course, would be youth on the land. But the history of pastoralism in East Africa is such a disadvantage that most of the land, from the colonial days, if you look at the areas where pastoralists live, you find that they are near national parks. And the issue is, when you look at it from a natural perspective, those areas, the animals are not there by accident. So the animals that the pastoralists graze are kith and kin of those animals. You get the point? So this land is most optimally used for pastoralism. But since colonial days, the governments have taken over the land of colonialists, of pastoralists, making them national parks, game reserves, and later on, when mining activities take place, like in the Kasese area, the areas are fenced off or gazetted. So the most optimal, of course, thing would be for you to own the land.
Yes.
But the issue...
If you can't own it...
If you can't own it, then you rent it.
Do it like the fishermen.
You rent it, just like somebody, I can come to this building and rent a space and run an office.
You can rent a pasture land.
Yes,
okay,
and people actually do that.
Later on, I would like you to give us a profile of pastoralism in Uganda. Tell us why it's practiced. But maybe before we do that, let's talk to the Mr. Isimbwa from the Basongora Group of Justice and Human Rights. What's your experience in Basongora? Is it that place called Basongora? Talk to us about your group.
Well, the experience, I think I shouldn't confine myself to Basongora alone. Let's look at the wider area.
Give us the wider area if you have it.
Now, if you look at the regional center, that is Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania.
Yes.
Let's look at the peripheries. Like he has said about where is the park. If you look at the Maasai land, if you look at the Oromo land, if you look at
Oromo in Ethiopia, Maasai land in Kenya.
Yeah. If you look at the Borana land in Ethiopia, northern Kenya.
Yes.
If you look at Basongora, if you look at Utuku, if you look at Mburu, the question is who grabbed whose land?
Yes.
Is it the people that grabbed the land of the government, or the government grabbed the land of the people? That's the question that we should answer first before we can...
Let's get the answer from you.
I think we can collectively look at who grabbed whose land.
Talk to us about that.
Now, two, let's look at these lands. Why is it Maasai land? Why is it Oromo land? Why is it Basongora? If they didn't own it, why was it named after them?
Yes.
That would be another question to look at.
Yes.
So it's a bit funny. It's like looking at a bottle of water and someone says it's halfway.
Yes.
If I may ask you,
half empty, half full.
Is it half empty or half full?
Go on.
It's a question of perception. So by not understanding pastoralism as a way of life, by perceiving it to be archaic, outdated, which is wrong, someone gets...
It's a modern thing.
It's not only modern, it's ancient, it's ongoing, it's to be there, there is no way you can do without it.
Till kingdom come. Go on, talk to us about
now,
the modernity of pastoralism.
Yes, three. Let's look at advantages and disadvantages. You are talking about animals.
Yes.
The cattle, the sheep, the goats, and all the rudimentary animals. If you look at Uganda, out of 11 million heads of cattle we have in the country,
yes,
about 10 million comes from the pastoralist area.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now, I want you to imagine an experience where you get rid of all the 10 million heads of cattle,
yes,
and then you remain with 1 million, and you look at the consumption of the country in terms of meat. What would it mean on the economy of this country if we had to export all the meat from elsewhere?
To import it.
To import it.
Right.
What would it mean? It would be very, very, very bad. Yes. So let's look at not only the advantages, let's look at the way of life and how to improve it, not to change it. You know, there is that business of someone not knowing what he's talking about, and he says, I know, since I am in position of discussing it, I'm in position of renaming it. Nomadism and pastoralism are totally different.
Right.
Because when you move from one section to the other, that is transhumance. Out of nature, if you look at the rangelands in this region, out of nature, the pastoralists have adapted themselves to the environment. And when you look at conservation, you remove man from the conservation aspect, then it's not conservation, because it is conserved in the name of man. If we look at the history of pastoralism and see who are the pastoralists, you look at the Muslims, you look at the Christians. Ibrahim was a pastoralist, Moses was a pastoralist, Jesus was a pastoralist.
Even King David.
Muhammad was a pastoralist. Now, are you going to change nature now so that you get, because you said, why don't we forget about it and do other things? Forget it and do what? If you value the cow, if you value the goat, you should value the man who lives that lifestyle for the sustenance of that industry.
Well, interesting. I mean, many of the things you're saying, I'm hearing them really for the first time, but we'll go deeper in that direction. Honorable Wako, talk to us about the regional perspective. What happens in those places? Take it deeper than it's already said to us.
Okay, let me just clarify one or two issues. The bigger problem which we normally have in pastoralism, 80% of the land of pastoralists can only sustain pastoralism. It will not sustain agriculture, it will not sustain any other form of thing, but it will only sustain pastoralism. Pastoralism can survive better if we have two distinct fora, where we have wet grazing season and dry grazing season. What has now happened and what has made the pastoralists to be nomadic is the fact that due to human population, the agriculturalists are pushing on the pastoralists, reducing the land. The government is also pushing on the land, because, like, let's say what Amos has said, you'll find that all the national parks are within the pastoralist area.
Which came first?
Yeah, actually it is the pastoralists who came first.
Before the animals.
Most of them are even demarcated after 1960s. After 1960s, the ones I know of. Then the biggest is today the investment, which is a bigger problem for pastoralists. Because what has happened, because of the policy on the land, they look at it as being empty, so they want to push the pastoralists and they want to start investment. There are so many Arabs, there are Europeans who wants to invest in terms of agriculture, in terms of Jetropa to produce oil, in terms of oil exploration, in terms of mining. This all brings pressure on the pastoralist. On the regional perspective, you'll find that it is the same issue we are talking about, which is actually typical in every place. Take, for example, we are struggling with the Tanzanian government because they have decided to push people from the famous Loliondo area just because of one UAE investor. And
yes.
so many
Which investor is that?
Is from United Arab Emirates.
Yes.
And the main purpose, he wants to build a lodging, a hotel where they come for shooting.
Serengeti, is that the Serengeti
Yes,
area?
they come for shooting. Then he finds that the area is small, so the pastoralist has to be moved. And this is the third movement for the Maasai in the Serengeti. When they were developing the Serengeti National Park, they moved them. Then they moved them again when they are expanding the park. Now they are moving them again. And every time, people are moved without compensation, without consultation, without anything. Okay? You will find the same issue in Kenya, in Ethiopia, where
pastoralists are moved so that they can create land for sugar plantation. In Oromo, they have lost, in a place called Karayu, they have lost 90,000 acres for an investor who wants to establish sugar. They lost another 50 in Afar, that is also in the Somali region. In Kenya, we are still struggling with the Tana Belt, Tana River Delta, which is another problem where they want to develop sugar. And you can see that this is the biggest problem.
What's the population like, the people involved in pastoralism in the region?
Okay, almost except in, let's say, take Ethiopia. Ethiopia, actually, the population of the pastoralists is almost 60%.
60%.
60%. If you go to Kenya, it's about 30%. If you go to Tanzania, it's almost another 30%. But in Uganda, I think it's a bit smaller, comparably.
All right. Mr. Mutabuka, how do we draw that middle ground? How do we strike a balance?
I think striking a balance is sometimes like sharing with a thief.
What do you mean? Who's a thief?
If you are taking away my shirt and you are saying we strike a balance, are you saying you should take one sleeve and stay with another sleeve? What I'm saying is that our constitutions, they guarantee rights of people to live, to carry out social economic activities. Now, if you come and take away my land, where do you want me to go? If I can assure you, we have seen in urban areas, the moment you come and you demolish one house, in the morning you'll find a lot of people throwing stones, saying, where do we go, and every time you find women are saying, I'm a widow, that kind of thing. But the moment you displace the whole society, where do you expect them to go? And also, time and again, people keep on telling pastorists that you go and look for alternative livelihoods. But as Amos says, these people have been pastorists for more than 2,000 years. Why do you ask them to look for alternative livelihoods? I buy the view that you can ask people to do complementary activities. In other words, if I'm rearing animals, you can help me to open a slaughterhouse. Just like if you find somebody's growing coffee, you can say, by the way, by placing a few banana plants in the middle, you'll get food, but you'll still have coffee.
Yes.
So I don't think we should push the idea of people to be forced to look for alternative livelihoods. And I would actually wish to remind people who are trying to say pastoralism should go, that if we wake up one day and there was no pastoralism in this country,
yes,
and we started importing all the meat and all the milk in this country,
yes,
I think the Minister of Agriculture would be fired. That's when they would realize that there is something important that we have let to die. And I think one of the reasons really why these problems arise is because of the misconception of pastoralism. I'll give you an example. Karamoja alone, according to the 2008 animal census,
yes,
had 32% of the cows in the country.
Yes.
But when you look at the milk production, the recorded milk production, they say it produces only 8%. This really shows you that there is a problem between the data capture.
Yes.
Because these cows, if they are not producing milk, and you know very well most people in Karamoja, they don't grow other foods. So most of the time they drink milk and eat meat. So can you believe that 32% of the animals can only produce 8% of the milk?
Well, maybe some of the, like you said, data capture.
Exactly. So, and because we have failed to capture scientific data, then we undervalue the importance of pastoralists. But I'm saying, as I said, if we woke up one day and there was no animal at all being kept by the pastoralists, that's when we would know their importance.
Listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio, and tonight a unique topic. Is pastoralism still relevant? Looking at its nature and a general land scarcity. We're also getting a perspective from the region. We have an Honorable Member of Parliament from Kenya, Honorable Dr. Abdullahi Hajuwako. He's with us here tonight. We also have someone from COPASCO. COPASCO is the Coalition of Pastoralism, Pastoralist Civil Society Organizations, Mr. Benjamin Mutabuka and Mr. Amos Isimbwa from the Basongora Group for Justice and Human Rights. Mr. Isimbwa, people say you keep grabbing their land, you move from a designated place, you move to a place that's, you know, where people have land titles. How would they get land titles if the land doesn't belong to them in the first place?
I think we go back to the first question.
Yes.
Who is stealing whose land?
Yes.
Now, if you go back to the history of this country, Basongora is older than Uganda.
Go on.
Uganda is a creation of the colonialists.
Go on, sir.
And Basongora is much older than that. Now it's a question of who settled where at one time.
Well, but if you stretch that argument, you'll go to, you know, what Idi Amin said and say the boundaries of Uganda go up to Lake Rudolph.
Now let's come to that too. Because now you're saying we are taking someone's land.
Yes.
And I'm saying who's taking whose land. Let's go to that. Basongora is older than Uganda.
Yes.
And the Basongora in Basongora. Now, I don't think that you can name what you don't have.
Well, let's take a break. We'll be back. This is a little bit more than I can grasp in a minute. We're going for a break. This is Spectrum on Radio, and we'll go for a break. We'll be back.
By naming.
Is your internet provider turning your world upside down? Broadband Company offers fast and reliable internet solutions. And for the first 100 subscribers this month, we offer zero connection fees. Save up to 400,000. For more information on these offers, call toll-free 0800 222 111.
Broadband Company, more than you expect.
John, Mike and I, we go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. Soon people were coming to him from all parts. He made himself and his whole street prosper, and also helped friends, seeing potential in people and helping them on. But John never shouts about all his success. He is just who he is. Special.
So here's to men like John, who make a difference, who enjoy Nile Special, the rich, satisfying taste from the source. Nile Special. You've earned it.
Not for sale to persons under 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90 is brought to you by Stanbic Bank.
Welcome back on Spectrum. Tonight is pastoralism still relevant, looking at its nature and a general land scarcity. Our guests tonight, Honorable Dr. Abdullahi Hajuwako, a Member of Parliament in the Kenyan Legislature, also Chairman of the Regional Center for Pastoralist Elders, Mr. Benjamin Mutabuka, Coalition of Pastoralist Civil Society Organizations, COPASCO, and Mr. Amos Isimbwa, from the Basongora Group for Justice and Human Rights. You'll be able to call in and contribute to this discussion in a short while. Mr. Mutabuka, why is pastoralism practiced in Uganda?
Pastoralism in Uganda is practiced along the cattle corridor. Now, when you talk of a cattle corridor, you start from the southeastern part, that is Rakai, through Byantonde, Sembabule, Mubende, then you go to Chiboga, Bulisa. The word Bulisa comes from Okulisa, which means to graze.
To graze, right. So it's traditional pastoralist area.
Yes, a traditional pastoralist area. Nakasongola, this district north of Mukono. Yes, Kayunga. Then you cross Lake Choga, the whole of Teso, and the whole of Karamoja. So you can see it's a big part of Uganda.
And is it not possible to, maybe Honorable Haji, you can tell us, is it not possible to improve, I'm using borrowed words because I'm talking about something that's so brand new to me, improve pastoralism. Graze your cat on smaller plots, but grow the grass like other people do on small farms.
Okay, what we can say is the main essence issue is to improve actually the livelihood alternative and also to improve the pastoralism. This is very, very important. I'll give you one small example. In Kenya, we have Lord Delemere.
Yes,
Lord
the old
Delemere,
aristocrat.
Yes, he has been in Kenya and at the same place in Naivasha for the last, since 1920. What he has is what the colonialists give him. That is about 1,000 or 2,000 acres. And on that land, he has never grown any vegetation or any vegetable or anything for horticulture for export. He only does two things: livestock for beef and livestock for milk.
Yes.
He makes one weekend, he makes about 3 million
Kenya shillings.
Kenya shillings.
That's about
from the milk alone.
90 million Uganda shillings.
From the